Hello, everyone, and welcome to another K6 Office Hours. As always, I'm Nicole van der Hoeven. I'm a developer advocate at K6, and I'm here today with a bunch of my other colleagues. Robin, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Robin. I'm the CEO here at K6.
I'm Mark. I am the head of customer here at K6.
And I'm Tom, working on the professional services team.
Awesome. So we're here to talk about something super interesting, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about the difference first between front end and back end testing. Robin, I know that you've gotten a lot of people, and probably Mark and Tom would be able to attest to this as well. Probably a lot of people have been asking for front end, for a tool to be able to test the front end, but traditionally we've kind of just said that we're testing the back end with K6. What was your rationale for that?
Yeah, so we basically from the start, right, from many years ago when we started with Load Impact before K6 and now K6, we've always gotten questions if our solution can run load tests with real browsers. And as you said, we've sort of stayed away from real browsers just because we wanted to focus on the testing of backends, right, rather than testing sort of end to end through the front end and then backend, and wanted to sort of like stabilize that kind of use case before tackling browsers, because browsers is a whole other ballgame in a way. And now we feel that we've come quite a long way with K6 and the protocol level side of K6. So we wanted to finally sort of tackle the browser level side of things, both from the sort of perspective of load testing, but also moving into some other areas of testing, which has sort of been the strategy all along with K6.
Yeah, I think that when most people talk about load testing, they're only thinking about the back end, but there's actually a whole layer of it that we're not testing at all. And I know one of my personal, the way that I got started in performance and in testing in general was by reading Steve Souders' book, what is it called now? There are two of them. One, it's about web performance.
Well,
yeah. And he was high performing websites, that's it. And there's a second one that's like even faster, something like that.
Yeah, something like that,
I read those two, and he says that 80% of the issues that are associated with performance bottlenecks are actually in the front end, not in the back end. So, Mark, how often has this topic come up in your discussions with customers?
Yeah, I guess to give context around it, over the past 6 years I've been here working for the company, it comes up often. People say, "Hey, I want to test the front end. I want to see what's going on everywhere." And we, again, up until now, we always tested on the protocol level. So we always told people, like, you need to focus on the back end. That's kind of where you'll find the most exponentially scaling issues. The front end is never under concurrency. But over the years, I guess, even giving that reasoning for a while, meaningful use cases have come up. Hey, I want to hammer the back end, and while that's happening, I also want to see what's happening on the front end in an automated fashion. That could really be useful for my testing. Hey, when the back end is sending all these resources slowly, how long does it take until I get a meaningful paint on or render on the site itself? So it's a nice natural progression. I think makes sense.
So why haven't we done it until now, Robin?
Well, as I said, we wanted to focus on sort of the protocol level side of things. We've had so many features and functionalities that we wanted to implement first in K6 before sort of going to the front end side of things. And now we finally have the maturity in the K6 project with the whole sort of extension system and sort of a lot of the core functionalities in terms of scenarios, executors, thresholds, and the like, that we felt that it was now time to tackle the browser level APIs and make a really good sort of K6 version of that, to allow people to, as Mark said, mix sort of the backend testing kinds of scenarios with the browser level scenarios. So you can get like the full picture of, this is what it looks like end to end. The end user experience looks like this while I'm exposing or sending traffic to my backend systems to sort of stress them.
So I think another reason why we've been doing backend performance testing is that when you're talking about simulating maybe hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of users, it is a lot more efficient to do backend load testing. So testing at the protocol level is a lot more resource efficient, and that has a direct impact on your bottom line, on your cost, because it costs to have to provision machines on the cloud or just to have them in your data center or whatnot. I think just it's innately more resource hungry to have actual browsers that are being driven. It comes with advantages, but you also have to be careful to keep that in mind when you're running a test. Maybe it's more effective to do like a hybrid scenario where you generate a lot of your load on the protocol level and then you have a handful of users doing browser tests. But Tom, I know that you also have a performance testing background. Have you used other tools to simulate tests on the browser level before?
I have, yeah, on a number of occasions.
I asked like I don't know the answer.
Yeah, and this was with Selenium as opposed to Playwright, which is what we're using in XK6 browser. So, and one of the reasons why it was attractive that might not be as obvious as some of the other reasons we've already talked about, but some higher management wouldn't really understand what an error HTTP response actually means as far as the end user experience goes. And so when you're automating at the browser level, you can capture screenshots when there's a timeout. You're waiting for some element to appear. It never does. You get a screenshot, and that screenshot will effectively be the same thing that a user might be seeing. And it'll be some error page or something, or maybe something simply not rendering on the page because it's loaded with some asynchronous JavaScript HTTP call. So being able to present that to someone makes a much more compelling, this is bad news, than if you just say, this particular HTTP request had an unexpected response.
Yeah, it's a good point, because with protocol level tools, because you can download those JavaScripts, but you're not executing that, because that has to be executed client side in the browser or something. So just having a script and downloading it and getting the response time, that's how long it took to download that, not how long it took to run, which could be very different things, right? You can't really compare the two measurements. So before we go further, Robin, would you like to actually announce it or re-announce it?
Re-announce it, yeah, that we finally have browser level APIs available in K6 via an extension called XK6 Browser. So it requires a custom build of K6 together with this extension, but you can find already pre-built versions for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS on the release pages of this repo that Nicole has on the screen right now. So very exciting to finally have this available. It's a public beta, we should say also, so it's not sort of production ready yet. We wanted to get this out early so we could get some feedback and make sure that we take the product in the right direction, using sort of feedback from community and from customers, etc.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about this because for the first time we'll be able to have browser level and protocol level scripts in the same, browser level and protocol level tests in the same script, and we'll also be testing the front end and the back end. But also kind of like what Tom was saying, right, that if there are sites that maybe you could already test on the protocol level, but it's a little tricky, or there's just a lot of correlations, that could be a really good use case for using the browser level tool, right?
Yeah, Particularly when you don't have high concurrent VU requirements, it actually is quite feasible nowadays. 10 years ago, that would have been a different story, or even 5 years ago. But compute costs are continuing to decrease, and so the prospect of running actual browsers, especially in a cloud environment, is becoming much more realistic. And who knows, maybe someday it could even replace the need to do protocol level testing at all. The key thing to be able to do, and which I think XK6 browser is able to do, is still give you HTTP request level response times. That's information that you would want to give to your developers to actually debug issues. They're not going to be too happy seeing a screenshot of an error page. They'd probably want a bit more detailed information. And I think, we're able to capture both that end-to-end response time as well as the individual HTTP request breakdown.
Now, Robin, I know, by the way, for those who don't know, Robin was the first developer of this extension. He was the one that did like sort of a proof of concept and then just kept building on it. So I just always like to mention that because it's super cool that our CEO still builds features for K6. But I know that one of the things that you want or that you hope for XK6 browser is rough compatibility with Playwright. Why did you choose Playwright and not like Puppeteer or Selenium or something like that, one of the other tools that are available on the market?
Yeah, so I guess we can start with Selenium, which is the oldest one, right, and which most of the both previously and I guess today as well, companies building sort of solutions, load testing solutions based on browsers, they tend to use Selenium as the underlying technology. I think it's changing a little bit, I guess, more usage of Playwright, etc. today. But Selenium is based on another technology, right, WebDriver technology, which has had some issues, and Selenium's API is also prone to the creation of pretty flaky tests because of just how the API is. There tends to be usage of a lot of sort of like sleep kind of statements, if you use K6 terminology, to sort of wait for different things to happen on the browser side, and that can create quite flaky test cases. Puppeteer, which I guess is well, it came definitely after Selenium, right? Is based on a different technology, Chrome DevTools protocol. It was, at least before when Puppeteer came, was a Chromium-specific technology. But it allowed for more stability in sort of the execution of test cases. And then Playwright is, and this is as far as I know, is the same or partially the same group of people, but they moved from Google to Microsoft and basically re-implemented Puppeteer, but as Playwright, and fixed a lot of the things that they, I guess, felt they could have done better in Puppeteer. And it also made the API sort of multi-browser, and they improved one of the most important aspects, in my opinion. They made the APIs less flaky and focused on sort of like test stability, right? So they do a number of like checks when you do any sort of like input from a user perspective, using the mouse or keyboard, so like clicking or entering text, etc., to make sure that the element that is the recipient of that action is actually ready to receive it, right? So make sure that the element is present in the DOM, make sure the element is visible, make sure the element is not being affected by any sort of like CSS animation going on the screen, and that it can actually take the input event that you want to send to it. And that makes, sort of baking that into the API makes for the test authoring to be much more robust, right? So you get test cases that fail less frequently, which is super important, of course, for any sort of desire to automate testing, because you don't want to have flaky tests in your automation pipelines, etc. So I really, really like that aspect of Playwright. I thought it was, from my perspective, it was a huge improvement compared to Puppeteer and Selenium, and that they've added multi-browser support for Chrome DevTools protocol-based tools is also awesome. I know they've modified and patched like Firefox and WebKit to make that happen. But I think it's an incredible sort of feat that they achieved this. So that's why, in my mind, if I were to rank them, I would say Playwright is ahead of Puppeteer, which is ahead of Selenium. That would be my personal ranking, which is why I think it made sense to base on the on the Playwright APIs, because that there's clearly thought that have gone into sort of that API design, which I personally appreciate a lot.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, but I'd also like not put them on the same scale, I guess, because Playwright and Puppeteer are like close. I agree, Playwright is higher, but Selenium is a pain to run as a load test. Like I know when I was doing some benchmarking on AWS M5 extra large instances, with Selenium, I could only get consistently about 5 users. And that's very little, considering that with K6, with a protocol level tool, you can get like up to 40,000, and then with even with Puppeteer, which is what I use, not Playwright, you can get like maybe 40 users. It's a big difference, right? And then some people even use Selenium not just on its own, but like they use JMeter to drive Selenium scripts, which adds to the resource intensiveness of it. So it's just at that point, it's really like you must just want to waste money, because it is a very inefficient way to run a load test. I mean, do you get people like that, Mark?
Like wanting to run Selenium?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess going back to my comment from earlier, it's come up. I want to run a real browser. I want to test with a real browser. And the default answer was always, hey, focus on the protocol level. And also just the inefficiency, you call that. Hey, yeah, you can run real browsers, but browsers are resource hungry. And I share at least when I joined K6 Load Impact at the time, I was given the anecdotal comparison that, hey, we checked that out years ago running real browsers, and whatever it was at the time, we only got 2 on a single instance of wherever we were running it, and you can be more efficient, and it's more efficient to test at the protocol level.
Yeah. So Robin, you want to do a demo?
Yeah, let's do it. Perfect. All right, so we're going to use this example Woocommerce website that we have posted here on ecommerce.test.k6.io.
Thanks to Tom.
Thanks to Tom. Yeah. So it's an example e-shop basically that has a bunch of items here. So we're going to do like a very simple scenario where we click on an add to cart button here, and then we move to the cart to see what's in the cart, and then we're going to do some manipulation of the item in the cart. So let's switch to my editor, and hopefully this is visible to everyone. So this is a K6 test case, which is only using the browser level APIs from XK6 browser. So we have our module imports up here. We have an import statement here importing the K6X browser module. And this is because I have...
Could you zoom in a little bit, Robin?
Yeah, absolutely. Is that good? Too much?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So I naturally have a custom-built K6 version here on my local machine, so I can actually do this import. And down here, we have some options. So this is just going to use a single scenario. It's going to use a shared iterations executor, which means that the virtual users, in this case, would sort of share these iterations amongst them. But I'm only going to run this with one virtual user, and it's going to run in 2 iterations. It's going to run through the virtual user logic here, defined in this function down here, twice, right? And then I have this threshold defined, and the threshold is defined on one of the standard K6 metrics, HTTP rec duration, which is the response time metric. And this works exactly the same as it does with protocol level APIs, with browser level APIs, because we hook into the HTTP I guess, subsystem, you can say, of Chromium, so we can get these timings and report them back into K6 sort of internal metrics processing system, so that thresholds and other features that work on metrics work the same. Right, so if we move down here to the test logic, the first thing we have to do is actually launch a Chromium process. So again, XK6 browser today only works with Chromium-based browsers, so not with Firefox and WebKit yet. We can optionally specify some arguments here when we launch the browser. So we're going to run this in a non-headless mode, so we can actually see the GUI of the browser, because that makes it a whole lot more interesting. And we also have this slow-mo option, which is just an option to slow down any interactions that we have with the browser in terms of like mouse input, keyboard input, etc. So we can actually see things rather than just like speeding through it, right? It also makes the demo a little bit more interesting. So once we have the browser launched, we can interact with some of the methods on that object. So we're going to first create a new page, which effectively just creates a tab inside of the browser. Once we have this page, we're going to step through 3 different steps here, I guess, in this test. So the first step is just navigating to the front page of this e-commerce site. The second step is adding an item to the shopping cart. And then the third item is navigating to the cart itself and see what's in it, basically. So the first step here, we use the goto method on the page object. So we just provide URL and a condition here for when we want this particular action to complete, right? So we're going to instruct the browser to navigate to this URL and then wait for the network traffic to go idle. And that's when we consider this step to be completed, and we can move on to the next step. And the next step here, while on the front page of the site, we issue this query into the HTML DOM using a CSS selector in this case. We just look for a specific item, in this case with a product ID of 24. This query here returns an HTML element, and then we call a query method on that element, which effectively looks for a further element in the subtree of that first element that we find. A little bit complex here. So we're looking here for the add to cart button for that particular product, and then we issue this click action on that button. So we actually click on the button, and we know that this click to add this item to the shopping cart, it will issue an AJAX or an XHR request in the background to actually perform this addition to the cart. And once the addition has been completed, we can see this class being added to our anchor element, so a class called added. So we just simply here wait for this selector to become present in the DOM. And once it's present, we consider this add to cart step complete, so we can move on to the final step, which is navigating to the cart. So again, we just issue a go to navigation action here on the page object, navigate to the cart. Again, we wait until the network has gone idle. And the final or second to final step here is modifying the quantity of this item that we added to the shopping cart. So we're going to use this evaluate method here on the page object, which allows us to basically inject a piece of JavaScript into the browser's JavaScript execution context. So what we're doing here in this JavaScript snippet is we're querying DOM again for a cart item element. And beneath it, we are looking for an input element with a class name of quantity or QTY. We use this element object here and change the value of it. So this is an input field, right? So we change the value from 1 to the number 2. And then the final step here is to take a screenshot of this page, so we could verify after the fact and see that the cart was changed in this case. Might be interesting. And those are the 3 actions. Then we close the page and close the browser, and then we sort of do the same thing again, right? So twice. So if we go to my terminal here, and I guess I have to increase the screen size here as well. All right, so if we just run K6 as normal now, so K6 run, and then we point to our demo script. Mine's called demo3.js.
I don't actually see it on the screen. I think it's just taking a bit to... We're seeing like this, like the previous screen that you were on, we still see it on
you see the editor
for some reason. Yeah.
You see, we have a few artifacts. I can see you moving
Yeah.
things around, but it's strange.
Okay.
Maybe
Yeah,
it's related to your laptop almost taking off.
Yeah, could very very much explain that. All right, what could we do then?
Well, you
I'm
can see
not
the
actually
K6 run
sure.
command, so just try and run it
Okay,
and see if
let's run it and we'll see what happens, right? So we're just gonna execute this as we normally execute a K6 test, and hopefully we're gonna be able to see the browser window that's gonna pop up now if the lag of the visuals is not too bad. Well, I guess you're not gonna see anything. All right, so I'll have to just do a commentary, I guess. So we have a browser window open, and we are navigating to this ecommerce.test.k6.io site. We find this product that we're looking for, and we click on the add to cart button of that product, and then we navigate to the cart itself, where, if this site allows.
Would you like to try and reshare your screen, but like share your whole screen instead of the window?
I'm sharing my whole screen, the second screen, but yeah, I can try stopping
okay.
and trying again. Let's see.
The good old turn it off and on again.
Yeah. I mean, is that not the first thing that you say? Even
let's
when
see if
I
I
have an
can-
issue, if you can't turn it off, then you restart it or delete it, delete and apply for Kubernetes.
Let's see if I can do this
It's
without
always the
actually-
same thing. There is a question here that maybe we can talk about as well. Does K6 have any mechanism for storing screenshots and other artifacts in something like an S3 bucket? Thinking how this would relate to the CI/CD talk on now. Oh, this was during the observabilitycon, which is where we did the announcement. So I don't believe that XK6 browser doesn't add support for being able to do it in an S3 bucket, right, Robin?
No, exactly. So we haven't anything specifically built into XK6 browser for storing screenshots or any other kind of artifact from a K6 test. It's something we're looking into because, I mean, today we can do screenshots, but we intend to also add support for capturing videos and generating PDFs, etc., from pages. So we are actively looking into how we can do this efficiently, both when you run sort of tests with one virtual user, so effectively like a functional test or a very simple end-to-end test, compared to when you do it as a load test with maybe thousands of users, because you probably don't want thousands of users to create screenshots and videos, etc. So we're trying to find a good solution that works for both of those sort of like scales.
Okay, I think your screen looks better now. Let's give it a
All
go
right,
again.
let's give it a go again then. So it's a little bit laggy if I look here in the screen, but okay. So I don't know if you can see the full command I typed, but K6 run demo3.js. Can you see that on my screen?
No,
No.
we just see
Very,
K6.
very laggy. Yeah, I think there's a extreme lag between my screen and what is actually shared. Let's see if I execute this and if it runs. Otherwise, I guess we'll have to backtrack from this demo idea.
Okay, well, we're seeing it's running. This is like a lot of lag there, though. Tom, would you happen to have anything handy?
Robin, if you can share the script, I can try running it on my machine.
Let's do it.
Okay.
It's one of those very visual things that you really need to see to
Yeah,
believe.
because the cool thing is that while you're running the script, the browser actually pops up and there's like an invisible user using it.
You're still screen sharing, Robin, by the way.
I can remove him so you can post it
There we
to
go.
Tom.
Thank you.
I assume it is his laptop trying to take off. It just can't handle everything at once, so it's treating the screen share as the least important.
Yeah. Yeah, clearly it's not the least important. But I think that script only has like just the browser tests, right? Because I
Yeah.
think it would be super cool because once it's in K6, well, even now, if you have to build your own custom version of K6 because right now it's an extension, but you can already have like browser tests and protocol tests in the same script, which is so good because before this you would have had to have learned two tools at least and have very different test suites. So not exactly the most efficient way to do it. Mustafa is blaming MacBooks on it. Shame on you.
Okay,
My
Tom,
Mac is
there you have
fine.
it.
Let me know when you want to share, Tom.
Yeah.
Mark, have you like talked about this to other people, external people already, and have you gotten some initial impressions?
The people have asked about it, and we've been kind of teasing that it's something that we're working on. Is beta to some of our customers and prospective customers for a while. One prospective customer sales team is currently speaking with. I was able to send them the announcement, and they seemed pretty excited about it because they directly told us, "Hey, time to first paint is a meaningful metric for our company." They're an e-commerce company, and that's not surprising.
That's a good thing with building on the DevTools protocol, right? Because like I know Selenium has issues with not being able to intercept browser events as well, but also Chrome DevTools opens up all of these front end metrics and even the Lighthouse stuff later on. That's not there yet, but there's I think the choice of the DevTools protocol was a really good one from a like future features perspective.
Yeah,
All right.
I really like it. Are you ready, Tom?
Yes, I think so.
All right, let's do
Go
it.
for it.
Let's hope this works better.
Yeah.
Go Windows.
Oh yeah, Tom is actually on Windows.
Well,
I
yeah,
would
this is
screen share, but I only have one screen.
it's a testament to this all being very cross-platform if this runs. So
Oh
that's
yeah, inadvertently.
everything look
Could you
okay?
also increase your zoom, please?
Yeah. Electron Visual Studio Code. Okay. All right. Okay. So I've got a K6 binary built in this directory. So I just do K6 run and then woocommerce.js. There's the browser popping up. I didn't know it takes a while to load the main page. There we go. This looks like it's added to cart. Now it's gonna navigate to the cart, I believe. Okay, I think that was it actually. It closes as soon as it's taken that screenshot. But in this folder now there is a cart.png, and this is what that looks like. So we've got a quantity of 2 there, which I think is what we're expecting to see. And
That is awesome.
yeah, we've even got some browser-specific metrics that show up here as well. So DOM content loaded, first content paint, meaningful paint, browser loaded as well. So these are all really useful timings to keep an eye on, and they're timings you wouldn't see necessarily if you're doing this at the HTTP level. So that's quite useful straight away. I haven't had to do anything unless it's in the script somewhere to have these guys appear here.
No, I think those
No,
just
it's
happen
automatic.
automatically.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
default
Nice.
metrics. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
And you'll also be able to do custom metrics just like you can with K6 core. And by the way, so the reason right now it is an extension, that means that if you download K6, you're not going to be able to get the browser part already baked in. And the reason that we do that is because we're really picky about what we do put in K6 core. Mihail from the K6 OSS team was just here a few episodes ago, and he was talking about this very thing, that they're very rigorous, like the K6 OSS team go through everything that's included in that binary to strip away absolutely everything that's unnecessary, because a performance testing tool should itself be performant. So we are still very much at an early testing phase for XK6 browser, which is why it's an extension for now. So it is usable, but it is still not exactly where we want it to be before it gets pushed into K6 core. Do you agree with that, Robin?
I completely agree. Yeah, that's the reason. So we decided as part of like building the XK6 extension system that whenever we want to introduce any sort of major capability or functionality into K6, we would first build it as an extension so we can have it sort of grow up outside of K6, so we don't introduce unstable things into K6 core, because we want K6 core to be really stable. It's sort of one of the core priorities in everything we build around sort of testing, that the tool should be very stable. So that's what this extension system allows us to do. Like, it allows us to test things and stabilize them before we eventually perhaps include them into core. So that's what we're doing now with XK6 browser as well. Yeah.
So if you want to try this out, by the way, I assume that you had stopped sharing, Tom, already. Let me know if you want to get back on. But if you do want to try this out, first you'll need to read into the XK6 extension system. And I personally think that it's a sign of maturity of a tool or platform when they're able to open up to other people to do custom things with that product. So I really love that XK6 exists. It's basically a way to bundle your own custom things into K6. It's not technically a plugin, but it does fulfill the purpose of you being able to pick and choose, essentially, which features you want to get included in your version of K6. And one of them right now happens to be XK6 browser. But that doesn't mean that that's the only thing that you could add. You could just imagine like this ideal of having, the API tests from K6 core, and then XK6 browser for functional and also browser-based load testing. And then you could add in XK6 chaos for chaos engineering. I got this comment on LinkedIn a few weeks ago from someone who said that K6 is becoming an SRE's Swiss Army knife because it can just do so many things. Sorry?
Sorry for interrupting you. I said Pavel is going to love that, the Swiss Army knife term.
Yeah.
Pavel, our CTO, he uses that term, yeah.
Oh, does he? Okay. Yeah, I think that's what it's turning out to be, because now it's not just load testing that we can get into. And really, it shouldn't matter what type of testing you're doing. Ideally, you'd be able to do many different kinds because it all affects end user performance. This also opens it up to things like, and I'm looking in the future, okay? Don't expect that it's there now, but what about things like accessibility? We currently don't have anything that could test for that. Is that something that we at all get asked about?
I haven't.
So. No. I haven't heard that, no.
Because I really love how Marie Drake was on early on in K6 office hours talking about accessibility and how she does it with Cypress. And I believe she uses the Axe library for it or something. But yeah, that's the ideal, to have one tool to do it all, one test suite, one language. Oh, let's talk about the language, actually. So the scripts are in JavaScript, as Tom and Robin showed you, but it's actually written in Go, just like K6 is. So it comes with all of the same performance benefits that made us choose Go in the first place. Robin, how about, so I don't want it all just to be about what's cool about it. What doesn't work? What are its limitations? Or what isn't available right now?
Right. So I think we mentioned this in the beginning, but we aim for having rough compatibility with Playwright APIs, at least initially, because and then the rationale for that is just to make it more familiar to people, that we don't introduce a completely new API that people have to learn. So it's easier to sort of try with the knowledge that you already have using Playwright. But we don't support the full sort of breadth of the APIs that Playwright has. It's a pretty broad set of use cases that you can use Playwright for, and we don't support all of those APIs. And probably all of them wouldn't make sense also for the sort of use cases that we are aiming for either. And another big sort of roadblock for us in adding support for all the APIs is that K6 itself, K6 core, does not support asynchronicity, so promises in JavaScript. So that's something that's currently being explored, I know, by the K6 open source team in terms of the extent to which we can, in the short term, support promises and asynchronous JavaScripts. But currently we don't. We can't implement some functionalities that exist in Playwright basically today. So those, I would say, are the biggest sort of limitations today, right? That we don't have the full breadth of APIs that Playwright has, and we can't do some of the asynchronous APIs that Playwright supports. As well as the multi-browser, of course, is a big major thing, right? Where we focus today on the Chromium-based browsers, and we'll look at Firefox and WebKit in the future.
I don't know if you mentioned that earlier when you were talking about Playwright versus Puppeteer, but that's a very big selling point of Playwright, that it's built to do cross-browser testing.
Yeah.
So now we're getting into cross-browser load testing, potentially. Not that you really need to do it that way, but I think that's very cool. Some applications just don't run very well on certain browsers.
For sure, yeah.
Nellis Niku says, K6, a Swiss Army knife for building reliable systems.
I think this is Pavel, given the sneaku in the end there.
Oh, is it? Oh, that's right. Forget it. I was going to be all excited, but that's our CTO. He's just coming up with a tagline there, incognito.
Yeah.
I think another cool thing, once we can support different browsers, replacing like a browser stack or similar, that, hey, you can run some tests, see how everything performs, make sure everything's correct, and automate that as part of a pipeline as well, or a different step. Imagine running different K6 steps or tests in different steps to really make sure before pushing further.
Yeah, that's awesome, because we already support multiple scenarios. So to be able to say, run this API, this function filled with API stuff, like HTTP requests at the protocol level, and run it at this load and have this load profile, and at the same time simultaneously have the scenario that starts at this time and only run 10 users of that, but have it constant, and like it's just more information about the entire system. What are you excited about, Tom, for the future of XK6 browser?
Oh, the prospect of running a load test consisting entirely of browser-based VUs is something that I'm quite interested in, having done it before. So the largest test I ever ran went up to 10,000 virtual users, concurrent virtual users. I don't remember the exact number of VMs that were needed to support that, but I think it was at least 80 in the Selenium world. So there's quite a lot of Chrome instances per load generator, and funnily enough, there was no difference between running that headless or not. So so I just had it all showing up, and I could actually log onto these machines and see hundreds of Chrome if not thousands of Chrome processes. There would be hundreds of actual windows, but behind the scenes, Chrome actually launches multiple executable processes for each instance of Chrome, and it was just like a massive long list. And it worked surprisingly well. And there was a bit of work to remove some of that flakiness that Robin alluded to exists with Selenium. And so I'm really looking forward to not having to worry about that flakiness. And this is one of the reasons why we're in this beta phase right now, to iron out all those issues, so that by the time it's fully released version 1, it'll be a very stable way of running load tests, basically. And I was doing this for a customer. It was a managed project, and so the people I was reporting to were very, very pleased, and to be able to see the actual page that users would be seeing themselves when the problem started happening. So and the other thing was, the scripting would have been rather complex to do at the HTTP level. The actual automation code itself was pretty easy to write in comparison, and that's also a big factor, particularly if you're new to load testing or automation in general. Doing that stuff at the HTTP level can be very challenging, and so it can open up load testing to a completely new set of users, potentially functional testers that are being asked to suddenly do non-functional testing. That's a big step.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it should be a lot easier to do with browser level automation.
Yeah, because I think that writing a protocol level script can be a little bit daunting depending on the application, because if you're testing like a website or something, and rather than like an API endpoint, it might not be as simple as just doing a single HTTP request. Sometimes you might have different headers. Sometimes there's correlation where you have to get something dynamic from the previous response and put it in the next one. But when you're testing at the browser level, you don't really have to care about how those things are being formulated, because that script is driving the browser the way any user would. When we use normal websites, we're not exposed to what header is being sent or the authorization token or anything. We're just thinking, oh, there's a button, let's click on that. And that's what the browser level script is trying to replicate. So you can see on Robin's script earlier, it was way simpler, and potentially maybe those requests could have been really complicated, but to a browser level script, it's really the same. And even when, from a readability perspective, if you're not used to reading load testing scripts that are on the protocol level, it's way more intuitive to just see like browser.click, rather than, a post request or something like that with like things that are encoded, like credentials or something. So that's a lot easier. James Leatherman has a comment. Just the savings of getting around Okta at the protocol level will be worth it.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, authentication is one of those things that happens very early on. And so, if you're new to load testing at the protocol level, this is a major stumbling block. And there's usually several redirect chains going on and requests going off to different hosts, and that's a lot to expect of someone to be able to do right off the bat. So yeah, that's a very good point.
I would also say that the whole sort of like recording and playback becomes easier as well when you sort of record down to browser level APIs compared to protocol level APIs. Well, for one, the generated scripts in the case of K6 would not contain all of the various like static assets, right? Because you can just keep it on the sort of document level navigation events, because all the static assets are just like implicitly loaded as part of loading the page, and you don't have to care if there's like view states that needs to be passed between requests and things like that, or XHR requests, or sorry, like Caesar tokens and things like that. They just work, right? Because you just click on elements. You're at the higher level. So I look forward to that when we have, which is part of our roadmap, right? To add support for recording scenarios that record down to sort of browser level APIs compared to protocol level APIs.
Oh, James actually just asked a question about that. Are we planning a recorder for this? Just to
Oh,
apply
hell
to
yeah.
my laziness. It's not laziness
Definitely.
though. It's like wanting to be efficient with your time, right?
Exactly. That's how I would
Work
phrase it as
smarter.
well. Yep.
Why do something that can be automated?
Yeah.
Exactly.
But also to your point, Robin, I think that there's a lot of things that if you have an API load testing script, that if they just change the endpoint, or if they change something on the page, then your scripts may no longer work and you have to refactor them. But if nothing changed on the UI, like all of the selectors are the same, then the script wouldn't even be affected. And vice versa. It could be that something changed in the UI, but the endpoint didn't change. So then maybe the browser level wouldn't work, but the protocol level would. So having both of them is actually like a bit of a safety net as well, to make sure that you're still automating something and applying load even if something changes.
Yeah, definitely. And like protocol level and browser level also lends themselves to different use cases, right? Like you would use protocol level, obviously, if you're testing like an API or microservice or something, where a browser doesn't even make sense, right? Whereas if you're testing a more complex, maybe website that, has either like some sort of authentication like Okta or some other, thing that makes it more difficult to do a protocol level test, the browser level APIs really shine. So I think they complement each other, but are effectively applied for different use cases.
So how is this going to change things for K6 Cloud? What are the plans for having XK6 browser functionality available to scripts run on K6 Cloud?
Well, so this functionality is only for open source. No, I'm kidding, of course. We're going to, of course, implement this in the cloud. It's just that we typically have the way of implementing things first in open source before we take it to the cloud. Because again, like we want it to mature and make sure there is like that basic level of stability and reliability in using the tool. And then we will look at how we can implement this at scale for our customers of the cloud service. We also want to have it sort of like a more complete experience in terms of recording capabilities and the test authoring using our test builder feature and things like that before we can launch something in the cloud. But it's coming.
What do you think? Will most people on the cloud, most K6 cloud users, will they want to just have both, or will they choose one or the other?
I think we'll see both. So I think, I mean, we've heard from customers that have requested this over the years that some only want to have like a small number of virtual users using browser level APIs just to capture sort of like the end user experience, so they can see what it looks like in terms of like screenshots, videos, and these like browser level metrics like first contentful paint and things like that. Just so they have both. But it's as you mentioned, or as we mentioned several times, it's very inefficient to run, say, a 50K VU test with purely browser level users. It can even be, very expensive to do so, which sort of prohibits doing that very frequently, which is bad for other reasons, right? So I think for larger tests, we're going to see like a mix where you generate the base load with protocol level and then just have a few VUs using the browser level APIs. But to what like Tom points earlier, if you have a scenario where you only need a handful of virtual users and you have a very, very complex sort of website that would be very, horrendously slow from a productivity perspective to write protocol level tests for, you would use browser level all the way through. So I think we'll see both.
What's your wish list, Mark, for XK6 browser?
So I can scope creep our front end team.
Yeah, pretty much.
Basically, so obviously all the metrics, time to first pane and DOM loading, like getting them right into the K6 cloud, having, I don't know, some type of new section to show the screenshots we're taking and organizing them. And then finally kind of like pushing that into our PDF creator so you can kind of have it all next to one another. And when my customers say, hey, I need to drop something on a senior executive's desk to show them that we're going to stand up for the traffic for Black Friday or whatever it may be, that they have that to give to them, and makes them look good, makes them look impressed upon that, hey, this is my whomever who created this report. I can understand it. I see all the information I need.
Yeah, and I think that that's a very big part of the appeal of this, that we're not reinventing everything. We already know Playwright works and it works well. We already know K6 works and it works well. So we're just using the same mechanisms. Like we already know how to process metrics. So we're just adding different ones, which is why it's so awesome and so exciting. This is like my favorite feature that we've announced since I joined.
Yeah, I just love these projects where you just like cobble together like the K6 tool, right, or platform now with extensions, and also the Chrome DevTools protocol, and then you just like it's basically just like glued together with JSON messages going back and forth between the two. That's really all there is to this extension. I mean, it's a little bit simplified, but it's really powerful, I think, when you have this ability to extend the tool that you said before, Nicole, and you have these powerful technologies developed by, I would imagine, hundreds, if not thousands of developers on the Chromium team. It's really, really cool.
In an earlier call, Tom mentioned something about mocking, and that is one of the things that's on my wish list. Being able to get to the point where we can stub out certain parts of the application. I actually mentioned on LinkedIn something like, oh, this is the first tool that I know of that's done both in the same tool. And someone said, well, actually, Karate has done that. And I had never heard of Karate. I don't know if any of you guys has, but they also have this way where they can intercept requests or events and then handle it a different way. So I would love to see that in XK6 browser too.
Yeah, Playwright has support for that, right? So it's and it's something we would want to have support for as well, where you can like intercept requests, change them, block it, change the bodies, change the headers, etc. So you can effectively do some sort of like mocking, right, and simulate different kinds of events happening, and see how your website or application handles it, basically.
Awesome. Okay, so we actually announced this at ObservabilityCon. You can still sign up and view the sessions on demand for free. I think some of them you have to sign up for, but it's like there's no charge for it. Some of them are just available, like I think the keynote is. So we have 3 sessions on there for K6 since we're now part of Grafana Labs. And the first one was, I did have a small part in the keynote where I just go over the basics of getting started with K6 and how to use it with Grafana. And then we had a separate session with me, Robin, and Olha called Intro to Using K6 Load Testing with a Grafana Observability Stack. Really, that's the title that we used because we didn't want to spoil the announcement. It is about XK6 browser and another cool feature, which is Prometheus Remote Write. K6 can now export in that format as well, which is super awesome. And there was another one that wasn't even an internal talk that is well worth watching. It's called Building Performance Tests into Your CI Pipeline with K6 and Grafana. And it's by Matthew Churcher from Vonage. And I think he demonstrates his use case at Vonage for K6. I believe they use GitHub Actions. So that's pretty cool. Thank you, the 3 of you, for joining on a Friday night. Was there anything that you wanted to say before we close off?
Just that we are very happy to get any and all feedback we can if you give XK6 browser a try. It is a public beta right now, so we do expect there to be plenty of bugs. So we would be very, very happy if you report those when you find them, as well as give us feedback on what features that you think are most highly prioritized for your particular use cases.
Yeah, so I actually just posted a bunch of links to ObservabilityCon and then to the blog post about how to use XK6, because you'll use that to get started with XK6 browser, and then the GitHub repo, which is now public for XK6 browser. So give it a go and let us know what you think. Tom?
Yeah, no, that's that would be my suggestion as well. Try it out, let us know how it goes, and yeah, give us feedback.
And Mark, if they want to give us feedback, what's the best way to do it?
For XK6, probably through the extension repo. It's probably the best way to centralize that.
Yeah, that's a really good one. But what about if people just have questions about how to use K6 and K6 Cloud in general?
Yeah, I mean, that's our support team. If you've signed up for a trial, a free account, you can always email support@k6.io. We also have our community forum, our community Slack, which are very lively. So don't hesitate to hop in there, ask questions. Tom, Robin, myself are active in there from time to time, along with a bunch of other people. So lots of ways to talk to us.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and thanks for watching. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye bye. Thanks so much. Bye bye.